Good evening. I am Shira Epstein. I'm the Senior Director of Adult Engagement here at Central Synagogue, and it is my joy to welcome you to tonight's program, Journeys to Judaism. For the last 15 years, Rabbi Lisa Rubin has guided thousands of students through their personal journeys to Judaism as the director of Central Synagogue's Center for Exploring Judaism. For those of you who attended the recent Friday night honoring of Rabbi Rubin's 15 years of leadership in a standing room only sanctuary, you know her impact on both CJ and on Central at large. Each person who passes through the doors of CJ makes a deeply personal decision to explore their connection to Jewish history, holidays, theology, prayer, and community. Lisa has the innate gift of making every person with whom she connects feel elevated, important, and unique in his or her journey, and we are thrilled to have her guiding tonight's conversation between a diverse group of CEJ's alumni as they share with us their uniquely Jewish American stories and conversion journeys. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Shira. It is so wonderful to have you here also. I'm looking out at many familiar faces. A lot of us have celebrated things together over the years. I want to introduce our phenomenal panelists. It's interesting because in Judaism, once someone chooses to be Jewish and they go through the conversion process, it is actually ill-advised to ever call them a Jew by choice or a convert, right? It's like someone who is adopted. It's part of their identity, but it's for them to share, not for me to ever share. So the panelists are really agreeing tonight not only to share their story, but to out themselves, right, as Jews by choice. So I want to call that out first. Cynthia Johnson came through the Center for Exploring Judaism in 2021, right? Pandemic times. We clicked immediately. Cynthia is an active member of Central Synagogue, and she works in the Center for Shared Society and is the director of the New York Jewish Coalition for Criminal Justice Reform. And she's here tonight with her husband, Marco. Kat, our newest Jew on the panel, just converted in 2025 this year, here with her husband Quinn, and Kat is a pediatric speech-language pathologist. It's wonderful to have you here, Kat. Justin Passaretti, also converted in February of this year, works here in New York in commercial real estate. And Kurt, the elder of the panel, who came through the program, I remember in 2017 with his now husband, Adam. I got to officiate that wedding, and it was phenomenal. Kurt went on to take a job with one of our partner organizations. He is the Director of Community Engagement for Honeymoon Israel in New York City. Many couples vie for Kurt's time and affection because they all want to be on his trips to Israel. So to put tonight into context, we are thrilled to be celebrating American Jewish Heritage Month. Part of the fabric of American Judaism, of course, is made up not only of Jews who are born into it, but our mosaic, thankfully, includes people who choose to be a part of us and make our story their story. Their stories, these four stories, are rich and varied. Their individual backgrounds and interests add to the diversity and beauty and strength of our community. I've shared with this community several times that conversion rates have skyrocketed in the past few years, and it's not just here at Central. We're seeing this all over the country. It's a wonderful pattern. What a blessing to us. And according to the most recent research, the Pew study, 14% of Jews in North America are Jews by choice. 14%. That means out of the 7.5 million Jews in North America, over 1 million have chosen it. 1 million people have chosen to be Jewish. That blows me away. We have 4 of them here tonight. Telling stories is such an important part of our tradition, so we're going to ask the panelists to tell their stories tonight. I'll ask a few questions just to warm everyone up, and then I'll look to you and our online audience on Zoom, looking at the camera to welcome. We have over 100, 200 people, not to make the panelists nervous, but plenty of participants tonight. So to start, and there's no order, but I often say in my classes, there are many doorways into Judaism. People take different on-ramps into our community. Interest is sparked by different things. So I think to set a context of who you all are and where you've come from, what was your on-ramp? What interested you about Judaism and caused you to get so engaged in it that you eventually became Jewish yourself? What was your doorway?
I can start.
All right,
Is this on?
Pat.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm so excited to chat about my journey tonight. I grew up on Long Island, which naturally was just a large Jewish community there. So always had friends, family members who were Jewish. Was not Jewish myself. I grew up Catholic. I actually even went to Catholic school, but never really connected with my religion. And then I went to college. I went to The Ohio State. If anyone's a Buckeye, shout out Buckeyes.
No, this is a Michigan crowd. Sorry.
I'm also secretly a Michigan fan because
works.
Quinn's sister plays lacrosse there. But that's where I connected with more Jewish friends, and then also, of course, met my wonderful husband, boyfriend at the time, now husband, and he's Jewish. So I started living Jewishly, parallelly, with him and his family, attending Shabbats, different holidays, and then over the past 2 years after we got engaged, we were just talking about our future and what that's going to bring and raising a family. And that's where we kind of talked about it a little more seriously and like what we wanted. So we always wanted to raise Jewish children. And we said, yeah, sure, we'll raise our kids Jewish. But then after the events that occurred in the past year since October 7th, that's where I personally wanted to just take the next step and make it more official. So that's where it brought me here today. It's been an incredible journey so far.
Thank you, Kat. It sounds very organic that your on-ramp was a mix of community, both where you grew up, friends at college, meeting the love of your life, and ultimately adopting it. And often that is, a journey. When we're surrounded by Jews and affected by Jews, their stories become our story. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I can go. Very similar, also from Long Island. I guess my first introduction to Judaism was when I was, very young, 5 or 6 years old. My parents got divorced, and my father remarried a Jewish woman. So as I grew up, I was very Jewish adjacent, attending Shabbat dinners and going to celebrate the holidays. And from a very kind of early moment in time, in my first couple times attending some of these events, I felt more connected to Judaism than I did my own religion, which I was raised Catholic, very secular Catholic, but I felt more connected to Judaism and the teachings of Judaism, and kind of sitting through Passover Seders. There was something that felt like it was drawing me in. Fast forward to college, I went to Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, where I met my wife. She's also Jewish. And again, we talked about, raising a Jewish family. And I really, thinking about having a family one day, hopefully, I really didn't want my kids to kind of look up at their parents and say, oh, well, dad's this and mom is this. And, that creates kind of a choice and dichotomy that can be hard on children. So, and looking towards my future, I decided to, make the jump and convert, and that's what brought me here.
Beautiful. Again, very organic. You had a Jew living in your home, married to your father from the time that you were young. It's great exposure. Cynthia or Kurt?
Can you hear me? Great. This is only for Karen. I'm never loud enough. I did not grow up on Long Island. And I did not go to Michigan or Ohio State, so I guess I feel like I have to say right now, University of Chicago. I was born in Chicago, and I grew up, I like that, Jewish adjacent, very Jewish adjacent, because I grew up on the border of Skokie. So, and in a time when I was a little girl, that Skokie was a hotbed of activism and problems when neo-Nazis were trying to march, and there were lots of Holocaust survivors, and there was the big push to bring Soviet Jews back. And for those who know our Rabbi Ari Lorge, I grew up right down the street from his family's synagogue. So we have lots of good memories together, but apart because he's much younger than me. I came by it probably organically too. I was baptized Lutheran, and when I was a very little girl, went to a very conservative Lutheran school, which I had serious problems with. And then through life circumstances, I was in another culture and another place, and then after that, another culture and another place overseas. But in situations where I always felt like I was the other from childhood. I just didn't quite fit. I didn't have my community, I didn't have my people. And after many years, I spent 16 years living with my husband, who is here, and I'm really grateful he's here. My husband is not Jewish. He is Italian from Italy, so he says he will never be Jewish, unfortunately, because pork is a food group for him. He has been very supportive, but when I was living in Italy, I decided when I was turning 50, that I really missed community. I had been away from my American family and community, and I just felt both a spiritual need and a need for community. And I also was searching for who I was, because through my life circumstances, I didn't know a lot about my relatives. And at the same time, I was studying Jewish European history and teaching it for work. And so I ended up deciding I wanted to go to some services. And I found Central on streaming all the way from Italy. And then I decided, in the midst of all that, so I started attending Central long distance, I decided to do a DNA test to figure out who I was, and lo and behold, I'm Jewish on both sides of my family. And that made everything, all the Jewish adjacent, make sense, because I was like, how do I know? I always thought I knew all these Yiddish words and grew up with bagels and all this because of osmosis from Skokie. But it turns out I actually, however, I would not be considered halakhically Jewish because it's not a straight line through the female side in some congregations. And so I decided I wanted to formally convert and came and met Lisa, and that's how I got here.
We were fast friends. Cynthia's story is unique and not unique. We have many people who come to us that say, I have Jewish heritage. I know I have Jewish ancestry. I either have the paperwork, or I have the feeling, or I have, the family artifacts. And we say, look, for you, it's less of a conversion and more of a reclaiming of something that was broken. It's putting the link back in the chain. Even though technically, yes, it's a conversion, but we have so many people now that I would like a new category, reclaiming what was lost. Very big part of our EJ population. So Cynthia, we're so glad you're with us.
Can I just add one thing to close the loop? I said I was looking for community, and when I found Central and when I found Judaism, I found that community. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the other. I felt like, oh, I belong, I fit in. This is a group of people who have common values and are like me.
Beautiful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kurt. Thank you, Rabbi Rubin, for convening us and giving us the chance to tell our stories tonight. You might be able to tell from the way I talk that I'm not from New York. I was raised in the northwest of England, and there are many, many Jews in the northwest of England, Manchester and the surrounding area, but I'm from a very small town near Manchester, and as far as I was aware growing up, there were no Jewish people. It wasn't until I moved to London when I was 18 that I started to even become aware of what Jewish was. And really, very slightly, there are sort of more isolated communities of Jews, and Judaism is practiced in a different way in London than it is in a place like New York, where I moved about 12 years ago. And I land in New York, and I'm walking around, and suddenly I'm like, oh, what is this? What is this Jewish thing? What is Judaism? Where it's everywhere. It's in the culture, it's in the food, it's in the history, it's in this other way that you can practice community, and you can practice belief, and you can draw on tradition and a whole different set of values than any that I had been raised with. And then my real journey to conversion begins like many others. I'm just a boy from the northwest of England who meets a boy from Kansas City and discovers he's Jewish. And we met around Thanksgiving time. And when it got to Christmas, I said to him, what can I get you for Christmas? And he said, well, I don't really do Christmas. And I didn't even know there was another option. I didn't know that it was, optional. And so he started to tell me a little bit about what Hanukkah was, and that it's sort of the equivalent in North America to Christmas. It's become more of a major holiday for Jews as they compete with Christmas. And I was like, okay, well, tell me more. And as soon as I started to kind of pull on that thread, it really unraveled more and more. And we started to experiment with doing some Shabbat dinners together. We hosted a Seder the following year. We did a breakfast for the high holidays. And I was leaning in more and more and more until eventually I turned to him and said, what would you think if I wanted to explore formalizing my interests in Judaism? And to his credit, he said, I think that would be really cool. Like, maybe we can do it together. And thankfully, the Center for Exploring Judaism allows folks to come and learn together, as I think many of us do, which I've always really respected, that it is never like, well, if you're going to do it, you go do the work, and you do it for me, and we'll meet when you're finished your learning. I love that we got to learn alongside each other. And very, very quickly, I think even before I was accepted onto the course, I really knew that becoming Jewish was going to be the end result for me, even though it is not required, which I also love. And so in 2017, we started taking the class around January. I got to travel to Israel in May of that year with the organization I now work for, Honeymoon Israel. And going to Israel was a hugely formative part of my Jewish identity building. We came back from that trip in May. I converted in September. We were married by Rabbi Rubin in October. So I call it my year of Judaism. I fully committed in that year. And here I am 8 years later, now doing Jewish every day, thankfully, because of my work and my practice. We welcomed our son 4 years ago through open adoption, and we are now raising him Jewishly. And so we're on a whole new journey where a person who chose Judaism married a person who was born Jewish, and we're raising an indigenous adoptee in Judaism, and we're all going to figure it out together as we keep going.
So beautiful. You see why I love Kurt, right? Beautiful story. You all mentioned a spouse. Some of you mentioned what your spouse's reaction was, to your interest. What about other concentric circles in your life? You tell coworkers, you tell friends, extended family, hey, I'm becoming Jewish. And I realize the reaction might be different based on the year that you decided to become Jewish. What was the reception like? How did that news land with the people close to you?
I just spoke about this recently, where I was speaking with a group of Israelis visiting New York, and when they found out I chose Judaism, they were very interested, and they asked me what my family thought specifically. And I was raised by my mom, who's a really amazing and learned person, but also is from a small town in the Northwest, and I don't think she knew many Jewish people, if any, growing up, and maybe now she knows a few as she's moved into later life. But when I said to her that I was going to explore what being Jewish looked like, she really didn't know what to make of it. You can still do Christmas though, right? It's like, Easter? well, we do this other thing. We follow this other calendar, and we explore other holidays, and the values and the traditions are rooted in a slightly different way. And she was really like trying to get her head around what this was going to look like for this person that she'd known all her life to choose this whole new identity, this whole big part of their life. And I understand that can be quite shocking, I think, when you feel you know somebody. And then what happened was we were, as I said, married by Rabbi Rubin, and amazingly, we were invited to have an aliyah here at Central Synagogue. We were invited up to the bima to be blessed by the community, which was an incredible moment. And I remember stepping down and walking back down the aisle to where my mum and all of our wedding guests were sitting. It was the night before we got married. And my mum just stood up and threw her arms around my neck and didn't let me go for about a minute. And I just know that in that moment, she felt what Judaism offered, what Jewishness could be, and how embraced I had been by the Central Synagogue and the wider Jewish community as a result. And in that moment, no words I could have used to explain my choice communicated it as strongly as what she felt from being here at Central.
So beautiful. It was really an evolution for her, as it is for many parents. You know, I do a lot of family counseling as part of this job, and while parents may be supportive and loving and they want their children to be happy, I have yet to meet one of them that says, I hope today is the day my child wakes up and chooses a totally different religion than the one I raised them in. Right? It can feel like a rejection. It can feel like, who is this person? Is this person even my child? But I think, as Kurt hinted at with his beautiful story, it takes time to adjust to such things. And I love to give people's parents the credit that their adult children take religion seriously enough that they'd even consider adopting a different religion. So those parents did a lot of things right in teaching you how to think about religion very seriously. Anyone else? How was the reception in your community? Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, my upbringing was very Jewish adjacent. So my family, after meeting Steph and, watching me grow up, I think my mom always says, I had a feeling that you were going to convert to Judaism, especially once you met Stephanie, and, I knew you were going to get married. And that was really great. It made the transition a lot easier for me, and I'm very fortunate that was my circumstance. But what was interesting is, as Rabbi Rubin mentioned, I work in commercial real estate, and my job takes me all over the country. I go to the South a lot. My company's actually based out of Dallas. And when I went down there and, people are asking me what was going on in my life, and I had mentioned that I was converting to Judaism, a lot of folks down there were taken aback, being a heavily Christian and a devoutly Christian kind of, very, very high concentration of that in Texas. A lot of people didn't get it, and they couldn't really wrap their head around why anybody would want to do that. And in an environment that you'd think would be maybe hostile or unaccepting of that, I was very surprised to realize that people just wanted to learn and, find out why. And I'd explain, my wife's Jewish and it's, important to me, important to her family. And after kind of hearing, what we were learning about in class and giving them the rundown, people were surprisingly, oh, wow, that makes sense, and that's really cool, and it's a really nice thing for you to do for your wife and for yourself. And that was just a very kind of shocking, moment to realize that people that may seem like they don't get it or won't get it or don't want to understand, I think they're really just curious, and once they learn more, people are more open than you think. And that was something that was really refreshing for me, and kind of maybe not affirmed my decision, but it feels good kind of informing others about Judaism and what it's like to live a Jewish lifestyle. So I thought that was really cool and like a very, interesting.
Yeah, surprising, not what you think.
Right.
Right? Beautiful. Beautiful. Restores my faith in strangers and humanity.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Especially in a time where there's so much, it feels like there's so much hatred out there, and it can, come from within our own borders. It's, it's nice to realize a majority of people are good and, aren't very hateful.
Yeah, beautiful. Kat, what about people in your realm? Coworkers, family, friends?
Yeah, so I think fortunately for me, having grown up, again, Jewish adjacent, loving that term, most people were super welcoming and very, very excited. I think I personally was a bit hesitant to share it with some people. So I think it was like internally feeling comfortable and confident with that decision. But ultimately, everyone was, again, super excited and wanting to learn and grow and hear my perspective as to why I was doing it. And I think in my work as well, I actually work with a lot of Jewish children, and that has kind of strengthened my relationship with some of their families, which has been super positive. They've taught me a ton. I am literally inside their homes, so they, like some nights I'm lighting the Shabbat candles with them on Fridays. So I think having that piece has been really awesome in my work as well.
Beautiful to have that support. It's not always the case, so that's wonderful. Cynthia, what about you?
I guess I don't really have a lot of experience with telling people other than my best friend, because I didn't have family. I don't have family that are alive any longer. And I made a conscious decision not to tell my adopted parents, because my dad was very ill, and I thought it was just too much. He was also a spiritual leader in our community, and I just did not want to go there when he was as ill as he was. So I didn't tell them. However, and I don't remember what happened when I told my in-laws, but the person who is most important to me outside of Marco is my best friend, and he is family to me. And the craziest thing happened. We moved to America, and we're sheltering in place, and it was right before Passover, and it turned out he had the same similar parallel journey. He was extremely Catholic and working for the Catholic Church, and he ended up leaving it and becoming, I don't know what they call them, like a Messianic Jew.
Wow.
And it was so surprising to me, because we ended up during COVID sheltering in place and studying Torah together. And that first Passover, my niece and my nephew, we made our own Haggadah. We made our own matzah, because we're from the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. We couldn't even get ingredients. We couldn't just go to the store and buy things. And it was amazing how that community and my relatives there, how it ended up becoming more involved. And now to this day, we study together and have two different perspectives on it, but share. At the same time, his brother said something very anti-Semitic, and that was really hard, because I hadn't shared with him, and I had a moment of, do I tell him or do I not? And it was really hard to figure out, when do I do that battle and when do I not? And I was too new to say something, so I didn't in that situation. And I thought it's time for me to learn more instead. So kind of a mixed experience for me.
Picture you on Zoom studying Torah with this other Jewish, adjacent person finding their own way. If there was a silver lining for COVID and that horrible time, it was the first jump for the Center for Exploring Judaism, where we almost doubled in size, because people were home and the program was online, and it was a really good time to think about what was important in life. So we couldn't open classes quick enough during COVID. And that was one time I was very wrong as director. I thought we're going to take a hiatus from this program. No one's going to be thinking about conversion. No one's going to be thinking about Judaism. Everyone is just going to hunker down. Of course, I had no idea how many years it would be. That wasn't the case at all. And the second time was October 7th. I was convinced that conversion would go dark, as it has done in periods of history where being Jewish just was not the popular choice, and I would have to find a different avenue within the rabbinate to manifest Judaism, and I was wrong again. That was the second bump. And so on the topic of October 7th, I'm wondering how that day and its aftermath have affected your Jewish identity. Kat, you mentioned for you it was an ultimate catalyst of, all right, I'm ready for this. For everyone, it's not an easy time to be Jewish. How have current events affected your Jewish identities?
Yeah, I think it's been super challenging, feeling comfortable and confident to be able to share this big part of me that I've worked hard to become and I'm really proud of, but have this kind of nervous feeling over my head. But on the same token, it's kind of provided me even more community and comfort to find people who are going through something similar. And kind of share that with them and be able to chat with people you feel comfortable about what's going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so October 7th occurred when I was actually in class, during the time period that I was taking the CEJ class. And though it didn't inform my decision to convert and make the jump, it really, I think forces you to take a look in the mirror and say, this is something that if I make this decision that I'm going to have to deal with my whole entire life. And, there's always going to be a stigma, right, with people that are uninformed, and people, may think differently. There may be people in different parts of the world that hate you for no reason other than a taken on identity. But I feel like I'm a big underdog story guy. I always root for the underdog in sports games, and it felt like, the Jewish people have always been an underdog in history, and I think when you look at a group of people that can take that much hardship and that much pain, it really makes you proud to join that community and continue to push that legacy. It comes with a very strong sense of strength, and I think it's helpful to harness your strength and realize in moments of hardship that our ancestors have gone through it as well.
Right.
And just as they made it through it, we'll make it through it as well.
Yeah.
I remember there's a very specific moment in studying at CEJ where, and I was lucky enough to be in your class, Rabbi Rubin, and you stopped at one point in the course and said, let's talk about anti-Semitism. It's a very real part of the Jewish experience. And I think you bravely asked us to consider what it would mean to become Jewish in that regard, like what it might mean for our potential future family or family that we already had. And I really remember specifically that moment and thinking it through for myself. And then when it comes to something like October 7th, and through my work, I talk about Israel every single day, even though we haven't been able to travel very recently because of the way that Israel is perceived in the United States, and it's an incredibly complex issue. And nevertheless, my work is in taking folks there and bringing folks into the Jewish community, and so I have to re-examine my commitment to Judaism and to my Jewish identity every single day through my work and through my practice. And also, I will name something that I think many Jews by choice feel, which is an incredible sense of imposter syndrome at times. And I am lucky enough to work with many Jews by choice, again, at Honeymoon Israel, and those folks finding their way to that community. And I remember really thinking after I converted, so now what? Like, I went in the mikveh, in the ritual bath, and I had one of the most remarkable days of my life. but now what do I do? Like, how do I keep being Jewish every single day? And I for me, it is a lifelong journey. Like, that is a life exploration and a commitment every single day to do something Jewish that makes me feel Jewish. And after October 7th, and in all the time since, it is a deepening, I think, of the values that I've chosen to adhere to, and this expression of hitching your wagon to the Jewish people, and really like standing by a commitment that you've made in a way that that I really appreciate the fact that I have to look inward in that process. And yeah.
Beautiful.
I need to separate it into two things, being Jewish and Israel. Because I wasn't raised with, as many people were, with this idea that Israel's a safe harbor, Israel's important, everything leads to Israel. In terms, first of all, of being Jewish after October 7th, I also, because I work at a Jewish organization, and I was newly working at the Jewish organization after this happened, and we were on the front lines of starting the first rally and all these things. It was horrific, and it was really hard. And I work in a division where we work with all the other people, too, in New York, where we interact in shared society, and that was so hard because, as you all know, what was going on, and support, not support. But I've never wavered as being a Jew, and I never will. I just don't feel that. I feel stronger than ever, and that's because of my connection, my deep connection with Central Synagogue, and always staying here, being a member here, being involved, coming to services, doing volunteer work, doing all the things I need to do, and continuing to study. I did an adult bat mitzvah, making that commitment. However, Israel, my relation to Israel and my thoughts about Israel change almost every day. And I would say I'm a Zionist, but one day, most days, but lately I'm questioning it. I have to take people that are not Jews to Israel and for work, and very soon. And I was talking with Shira beforehand about all the questioning and all the conflict and how nuanced everything is, and how do I hold it, because I wasn't brought up with this automatic, Israel's our homeland, and also as being a Reform Jew, and not being halakhically Jewish, and being married to a non-Jew. What does Israel mean to me as a Reform Jew, as somebody who cannot, I think, make Aliyah? So it's really, really complicated, and I don't have an answer to that yet.
Right. You can make Aliyah, right? You can make an Aliyah. You can move to Israel. The Interior Ministry will accept you as a citizen, but the High Rabbinic Court will not. Israel's Rabbinic Court is Orthodox. They do not accept any conversions other than their own. Not even American Orthodox conversions are accepted by the rabbinate in Israel. But we are one of a handful of synagogues in the United States whose conversion paperwork, whose blessing on conversion, can travel with people to make Aliyah and become a citizen with the Interior Ministry. And we have had students from this program do that and become citizens of Israel. So I have one more question, and then I'm going to open it up both to our online community and everyone here. You can choose which part of this question you want to answer. During the conversion process, if you think back, what brought you the most joy? Because it is a process, right? It's study, trying things on for size, testing things. What brought you the most joy and engaged you the most? And on the flip side, or what was the most difficult part about contemplating becoming Jewish, maybe something you put down from a prior religion? Give me joy or give me difficulty or challenge.
I might be able to do both in one.
Go, Curtis. You go.
For me, the most difficult thing about my choice to convert to Judaism is, what do I have to believe? I really got stuck on the G word, on what do I need to believe about God? What are people going to ask me? If I go to somebody and say I'm Jewish, and they say, well, then you believe X, Y, and Z about God, right? And I was like really stuck on that because I really, truly didn't know. I come from a fairly agnostic background, and I was like, can I even go through with it, actually? As much as I love this sense of identity I'm building, as much as I love the community, this way of practice that I'm like so entranced by, how can I be Jewish if I can't say, I believe this about God? What if I don't pray to God? And at one point, it nearly derailed me, I will say. I was like, I'm having a great time in this class. I love Rabbi Rubin. I wish her well, but I might just bow out. And then at one point in the course came the moment of the idea of wrestling and the idea of questioning. And one of my biggest takeaways from CEJ and every day since almost is that it is okay to question in Judaism. I think it's one of the most beautiful invitations of our practice and our people and our tradition is that it is actively almost encouraged to question and to wrestle with those ideas and to challenge and to debate. And I just loved that. And the light bulb went off for me. And I was like, I still don't know truly what I believe, but I want to explore it through a Jewish lens moving forward. That I was so sure of. And that helped me move past it and get me to the mikveh.
How difficulty turned into a joy to find out that the word Israel, Isra, to struggle, to wrestle, and El, short for Elohim, God. We are the God wrestlers. We don't have one clean concept of God. Someone recently said to me, okay, I'll trade in Jesus Christ. Who do you have? Right? That's not really the way it works in Judaism. There are many conceptions of God. It's a pro, it's a con, it's a difficulty, but it's wonderful to watch people come into the tradition and learn that just like any person before them in our tradition, they can debate also, and they can have a personal relationship with God. I'm so glad you brought that up. Beautiful.
I was going to say something very similar, actually, as
Go
well.
ahead, yes.
I think something that was difficult for me initially going into the process or my fear, I guess, was feeling like I had to know everything and know it all.
Right.
And I was really fearful of that and feeling like kind of that imposter syndrome. Am I going to be able to come out of this knowing everything? But I think from probably the first class, that was totally at ease, knowing that everyone kind of has their own interpretations of everything. And while we can learn about these experiences, rituals, different holidays, and where they originated from, you kind of are able to interpret it in your own way and connect with what feels meaningful to you. And that's something that's really stuck out throughout this entire process for me. So kind of turning that difficulty into a joy as well. Especially having your partner join you in the classes was super, super wonderful. We were able to kind of learn the background information and then over dinner chat about the class. And, Quinn shared, this is what I did growing up. I didn't really connect with that part, and sharing how he felt about all these different experiences, and then allowed us to kind of chat about what we hoped for our future and our future Jewish home. So I think that was a wonderful part of everything.
It's beautiful, and so many people share Kat's initial insecurity of, I'm going to have to know everything, there's no way. And I always say, I promised you all, there's no test at the end of converting to Judaism. The test is the rest of your life. Can I call you back 7 years later to sit on a panel and you know what you're talking about? That is success, right? That is passing the test. So I appreciate that insecurity. It shows a humility. No Jew knows everything, and that also keeps us busy, right? Our entire life as people of the book to study and explore more.
And just piggybacking off of that, I think, the biggest joy for me was building, your initial Jewish community within class, and I think a lot of us who do this, we've sometimes you feel like you're leaving something behind, and you're trying to look at the future and say, well, what are we going to do, and what will our traditions be? And that's a scary conversation to have and can bring on a lot of anxiety. And a big one, which you mentioned, was Christmas, right? And our parents were all, oh, well, can you still do Christmas? And Steph and I talking about, well, when we have kids, do we do Christmas? And we went out to dinner with some of our friends from the class, and they go, so have you guys had the Christmas discussion yet? And it was really refreshing to hear that. We weren't the only ones kind of, going through this, and we were able to have, conversation with them about how we were feeling, and they felt maybe a little bit differently. And it was just very comforting to know that, we're kind of all in this together. And even though your journey is unique and may feel very specific, you also have commonality with others that are embarking on the journey as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because part of the cohort model is making sure that everyone feels a part of a micro community. Some students come to us, they're members of other synagogues, terrific. Some students come, they have an extended family that's Jewish, terrific. Other students come completely on their own and are looking for that, family of learning. So the cohort model has served us very well for these exact reasons.
So I want to end with joy as well. I did not get a lot of that cohort model because it was the first one during COVID online, and so we never got to connect and meet during our time. However, because of the shift to online with everything that Central was doing, I did get to, through services and classes, really connect with Central members. And I want to just say her name in this space. Laura Strauss of blessed memory took me as a Jewish mom, and she said to me, I want to be there when you convert. Find out, I want to be there with you when you come out of the mikvah. And going back to searching for community and for belonging, one of the best days of my life was the day I went to my Beit Din and to the mikvah. I felt seen, I felt heard, and I felt understood by the people on my Beit Din. I have to give a big shout out to Cantor Dan Mutlu, who really pulled in my background as well. It was one of the most exciting, wonderful experiences I ever had. And then the mikvah had been closed for COVID, and we were the first ones to go in, and they wouldn't let anyone else go in but Lisa and I. And so I'm looking at people that were there for me. My group of Central support members came, and they stood outside the mikvah in a circle and were there to welcome me into the Jewish community when we came out of the mikvah. And it was amazing. And Rabbi Rubin had people talk and led us in a prayer, and they gave me blessings. And it was the most wonderful community and coming home. And I'm looking at people that were there right now and that are here tonight in this room still.
Cynthia, as wonderful as that experience was for you, and all of you should know, the day that a rabbi gets to bring a candidate to the mikvah and share that candidate with colleagues and meet, your families, for us, it's the highlight of our professional life. And I don't say that lightly. It's truly the highlight. It was special for you. It was mind-blowing for us. And I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you're wearing the same dress you wore on your conversion day 6 years ago.
First time I pulled it out of the closet since.
And that's the way my memory works, folks. I remember, and I was in a pink dress, and we looked very springy, and the pictures are beautiful, and these days are so very special. I want to open it up and let you ask some questions. And thank you so much for coming around with a microphone. And while we're doing that, I also just want to acknowledge my colleague who is working the Zoom tonight, Rabbi Sarah Berman, and our other colleague, Marina Nebro, who set this all up for us. Credit goes for them. We all just showed up. They did the work. So I just want to thank them immensely. But please, who had their hand up? And we'll have a microphone. And then we'll go to some online questions.
And thank you, Sarah. I didn't know you were out there. She was on my bait team as well.
Okay. I actually recognized how you all expressed how Judaism was very much intuitively for you, and also by intuition, something that resonated for you. But I also recognize three of you have clearly a Catholic or Christian background, one not. But I want to ask a question about the message in Torah and the Bible. It actually is the same. What influence, or how is the Jewish heritage or interpretation, how is that influencing your decision and point of view?
Are you asking how the Jewish Bible versus New Testament Christian Bible?
The Jewish heritage in interpretation and kind of the details and the depth. I don't like to use the word depth because that is a kind of droning thing, but it's a very exciting thing, actually, the details in the Torah.
How do you feel about all those details in the Torah? And have you gotten to do weekly Torah study? And what is your relationship to Torah and its stories? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, like you had mentioned, a lot of the message between Catholicism and Judaism, when you boil it down, they're very similar themes. I think what stood out to me is how those themes are conveyed, right? In Catholicism, there's a very, aggressive kind of Jesus this and Jesus that and Jesus saved, right? And in Judaism, it's not as cut and dry, maybe. And
Right.
I think that, when you're encouraged to study and wrestle with certain things and wrestle with the concept of God in general, like that's not something that Catholics really, they wouldn't be like, oh, well, it's okay to question the existence of God. Like that doesn't really exist in Catholicism, where Judaism, leaves room for that. And I think there's a much less cut and dry way to practice Judaism and live a Jewish lifestyle, right, than Catholicism affords. And I like to think of myself as more of an independent thinker, not a group thinker. And Judaism, leaves the door open for that, where Catholicism doesn't really. So I don't know if there's a kind of specific text that I relate with more in Judaism versus Catholicism, but I think the way that we go about practicing and identifying the way that you do it in Judaism in the room, kind of for individuality that Judaism leaves was attractive to me.
Beautiful. I'm going to rotate. I'm just going to go back and forth and take one question from online. Isn't technology amazing? I have it right here on my phone. So Gabriella is watching, and she says, when I finally decided to convert to Judaism, I actually realized I have always felt Jewish, even though I couldn't really explain it. Did any of you already have a feeling or sense of belonging to the Jewish community, even before you took the first step to join? Anyone want to take that?
I don't think I had a sense of belonging before, but as soon as I started to explore it, it felt so, for me, like it so quickly just felt like this is somewhere that I belong. And that was like, I wasn't prepared for that because I really didn't grow up religiously at all, and was sort of quite happy and settled in my, agnosticism and verging on the atheist. I was like, oh, I'm good with this. I like philosophy, and I love like examining questions of existence and the big questions in life. And I'm happy just to do that, through philosophy or a different avenue. But then suddenly I was like, whoa, I'm going to join organized religion? It was very shocking to me. But I just truly felt like a place like I was meant to be and a people that I was meant to be involved with.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Someone else's hand was up. Here, Michelle, great to see you.
Hi. I felt a connection from the time I was a kid. When I was in Catholic school, raised, Mass on Sunday and the sacraments and all of that, and that was fine and good. But almost from the time I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I felt some special connection to it. And I cannot explain it logically or rationally. It's because of this, that, and the other thing. It just was, just a feeling. And I resisted a long time because I thought, well, my family was not happy about my decision. And my sister knew the day I was converting, and she spent most of it in the bathroom throwing up. But she has come around, and it was just a feeling that you have about something that's right for you, and it's a big decision because the day you convert, anti-Semitism is no longer somebody else's problem, and you have to really understand that. But I'm glad I did it. I really am.
Is there questions for our panelists? If not, I have some from online. Okay. Here we go. How has, this is from Pam and Tony, how has converting to Judaism affected your professional life? Does your identity or the learning you've done impact you in your profession? I think we heard a little bit, right? Kat all of a sudden is realizing all her clients are Jewish. And
Yeah, I'm in Jewish preschools every day, in Jewish homes every day, and it's just, as I already mentioned, strengthened my relationship with them, allowed us to go on a deeper level. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, working in commercial real estate in the tri-state area, I deal with plenty of Jewish folks on a daily basis. And, what we're doing is deal making, and when you're dealing with somebody with a shared identity, I think there's a kind of a stronger bond there and more of a wanting and willingness to kind of get deals done. So just having a shared identity with somebody that I maybe didn't before has really helped.
You are learning about that immediate connection when two Jews meet. It's like you're a family, right? No matter where you are in the world, and you have a kindred spirit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that.
I can say that it not only affected my career, but it kind of gate crashed it entirely. Like, I was an actor at the time that I was going through conversion. You can ask Rabbi Rubin about how that affected the choice of project that I did for my conversion study. But I was really, really happy. I've been working as an actor for nearly 20 years. It was all I ever wanted to do with my life. And then the longer I sort of lived in my Jewish identity, the more I was like, I think I want to do something that makes me feel as welcomed and as brought in as I have been. And thankfully, through the organization Honeymoon Israel that I went to Israel with, who made me feel so incredibly seen, as Cynthia described on her Bet Din, just being made to feel seen and welcomed when you have chosen this identity was so impactful for me that I just wanted to try and help other people cross that doorway and be welcomed in the same way that I had.
So beautiful. I could listen to you all night, right? I mean, we could just keep going. It is 7:30. I am a stickler for time. I'm going to close out by thanking all of you for coming, for witnessing these sacred stories. To our panelists, from strength to strength, you bring so much to our community. I said it to each of you on the day you converted. We are the lucky ones. And I am just feeling more and more every day. We are the lucky ones. Thank you for bringing yourselves to us. And again, I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank Shira, Jim, who made sure each one of these microphones worked. It's not every day that somebody requests 7 microphones for one program. So thank you to our AV, and have a wonderful night, everyone.